Education and PLAR Math. And this is week 5 of classes, excuse me, in term 1B. So this week and next week, the last 2 weeks before the Christmas break. So we have, counting today, 4 classes, and then we have a 2-week Christmas break, and then we're back at it in January. So try to get as much work as you can finished before the Christmas break, and then you'll be caught up for after the holidays when we come back. You can participate in classes 2 ways, radio or Zoom, and the instructions are in your study guide, or you can contact me or your DEC. All PLAR Math students are welcome to attend classes, so it doesn't matter if you signed up for radio Zoom classes or IL, you can still attend the classes or watch the recorded classes. To contact me, you can use email, phone, or send a message on Facebook, whatever works best for you. For any students who didn't finish up their PLAR English last term who want to finish, you can continue on with it. You're not withdrawn, and once you sign up for PLAR once during the year, you are registered for the rest of the year. So when you finish one subject, you just move on to the next subject. And the English classes from last term are available on YouTube, so you can go there to watch the classes from last term, and the PLAR Math classes are being posted on YouTube as well. So you can go to B. Osman Wasa for the classes. The PLAR Math classes from last year are still available, so if you're working on right now we're working on lesson 2, so if you're working on lesson 3, 4, or 5, you can go to my YouTube channel to watch the classes from last year to get help. The new classes are being uploaded to the Wasa Distance Education Center YouTube channel, and there you will find the PLAR English classes from last term and the PLAR Math classes that are being recorded this term. Just a reminder, you've probably heard this already, that all PLAR students have the option of writing the culminating activity instead of doing the lessons and key questions, even if you have already completed and submitted some of the key questions. So if you started working on it before you found out this, you can stop. If you choose to, you can stop working on the key questions and try the culminating activity. Contact your DEC or me if you want to do that. If you pass the culminating activity, then you get your missing credits and you don't have to do the lessons and the key questions, and you can just move on to the next subject that you need to do. If you're not successful with the culminating activity, then you have to do the lessons and complete the key questions, and then you will write another culminating activity after all the work is finished. So you don't just get one shot at doing the culminating activity. Okay, you get as many chances as you need to pass it. If you're doing the lessons, there are 2 types of questions in the lessons. There are the support questions, which are the practice questions, and there are the key questions, which are your assignments. The key questions are the questions that you send out to me. So the support questions are, when you're going through the lessons, you will read a section, and then there will be a support question, read another section, another support question, etc. The answers to those support questions are near the end of the lesson, right before the key questions. So if you flip to the end of the lesson, you will see the key questions right at the end, and right before that, you will see the answers to the support questions. So do the support questions and then check your answers with the answers at the back. If you're doing well with the support questions, you're only making maybe 1 or 2 mistakes and you understand where you went wrong, then you move on to the key questions. If, however, you are making a lot of mistakes with the support questions, then you need to go back and read the lesson, watch the class again on YouTube, or contact me for help. Okay, so again, please do the support questions because they are practice, and you'll notice that the support questions are very similar to the key questions. So if you can do well with the support questions, then you should have no trouble with the key questions. The key questions, again, are the ones that you submit to me for marking, and those are the ones that have the marks. Support questions do not. All of the key questions are right at the very end of the lesson, so you can just pull all of the key questions off from the rest of your lesson when you're ready to send them out for marking. Okay, different ways to submit your work. The first way, of course, is to give it to your DEC, and your DEC will send it out to us here in Sioux Lookout. If your DEC is away or your learning center is closed, then you can submit your own work to us here in Sioux Lookout. So one way to do that is to scan and email your work to studentwork@nnec.on.ca and make sure you CC it to me. Or if you have a fax machine or access to a fax machine, you can fax your work to us. If you are submitting your own work, be sure to write your name. Okay, you can also write the subject and the teacher's name on your work, but be sure your name is on the work. Otherwise, we don't know who sent it, and we don't know who to send it back to. So make sure your name is there. You can also, if you don't have access to a fax machine or a scanner, you can use your smartphone, and with your smartphone you can either take photos of your work or scan your work with the built-in scanner on your phone, and then you can either email it to that same address and CC it to me, or you can send it on Facebook Messenger. Okay, another way to submit your work is to use our outdoor mailbox. So if you live in Sioux Lookout or the surrounding area and you come to Sioux Lookout often, then you can drop your work off at WASA. You can either use the WASA mailbox that's located on the side of the building toward the post office, or you can knock on the door and give it to whoever answers the door. You can also use Google Docs to complete your work, and then you can send me the link and I can access it that way. Make sure that the link that you send me is shareable so that I can access it. And you can also use Google Classroom to complete and submit your work. If you use Google Classroom, you're basically going paperless and you can submit everything online. Okay. Another reminder is that at the end of each term, WASA has 2 student draws, one for students who earned a credit and one for students who submit work. So if you submit your work throughout the term, every time you submit a lesson, your name will be entered into a draw. And every time you earn a credit, your name will be entered into a draw. So if you submit work and you earn a credit, you have the opportunity to win 2 prizes. Not quite sure what the prize is going to be for this term. As soon as I know, I will let you know. Also, because it's Christmas, we have a second draw, or I guess a third draw, and this one is for students who have already registered. So if you're already a student with WASA, you have the opportunity to win this Community Student Learning Center draw, which will take place on December 16th. So one student from each community can win a $200 holiday gift from a local store. So a store in your community, the Northern Community Store. If you're in Sioux Lookout or surrounding area, it can be Fresh Mark, whatever, Giant Tiger, whatever. Okay, so then that's for students who have already registered. Okay, so let's get down to business then. So start off with a review of what we were talking about last week. So we started lesson 2 last week, and we're going to continue with this lesson 2 this week, and we'll finish that up probably this week. Oh, I'm sure we will this week, and then next week we'll get into lesson 3. So of course, again, that means you need to get your work finished and sent out for marking. So last week when we started lesson 2 on Thursday, the first thing we talked about is decimals. So a decimal is similar to a fraction. Whoa, get back here. A decimal is similar to a fraction in that it's not a whole number. Okay, it's a part of a number. Same thing as a fraction. So rather than saying a half of something using a fraction, we can say 0.50. Okay, it's the same amount. Instead of writing 1/10, we can say 0.1 or 1/10 if we want to say it in words. So basically a fraction and a decimal are different ways of representing the same amount. So with decimals, we have numbers to the left of the decimal. Those are your whole numbers. And then our decimal point. And we have decimals to the right of the decimal point. And those are your decimals or your fractions. So each digit in a number has what we call place value. So there's a value for the place or the position the digits are in the number. So to the left of the decimal, the first number, first digit is in the ones place. The second digit is in the tens place. The third digit is in the hundreds place, and the fourth digit is in the thousands place. And we can keep going to 10,000s, 100,000s, millions, etc. But so for the place value for whole numbers, 5 ones, if you think of it in terms of money, would be $5. Okay, 4 tens would be $40. 9 hundreds would be $900, and 6 thousands would be $6,000. Okay, but to the right of the decimal, we know, like I said, that a decimal is part of a whole. So it's going to be less than 1, but more than 0. So if you think about to the right of the decimal, think in terms of cents. So the first digit to the right of the decimal is in the tenths place. The second digit is in the hundredths place. The third digit is in the thousandths place. And the fourth digit is in the 10,000ths place. So to the right of the decimal, there are no ones. Okay, it starts with tenths. So the 3 in the tenths place would represent 30 cents in terms of money. The 7 in the hundredths place would represent 7 cents. Now, of course, when it comes to thousands and 10,000s, we don't have money. We have tenths and hundredths. So for the thousands and the 10,000s, you might be familiar with that in terms of like racing, like thinking about the anything that's timed, like in the Olympics when they're running and stuff like that. Sometimes it's recorded to the thousandth of a second or the 10,000th of a second. I'm not even sure how accurate they are anymore. But in terms of money, we look at the tenths place and the hundredths place. Okay, so again, to the right of the decimal, less than 1, but greater than 0. So the other thing that we looked at is changing from a decimal to a fraction and from a fraction to a decimal. So to change a number from a decimal to a fraction, we've got 2 illustrations here. So first of all, create the top, so the numerator of the fraction. So basically, what you do is you get rid of the 0 decimal, and then the 15 would go on top in the numerator's position. Then you create the bottom. So we create the bottom by looking at the number, our decimal number that we started with, which is 0.15. So if we look at what's to the right of the decimal, we have 15. That's 2 digits. Okay, so 2 digits to the right means that our denominator is going to be a 1 with 2 zeros. So it's the same thing. So 0.15, we multiply that by 100 because it's 2 decimal places to the right. And then we also multiply 1 times 100. So basically we have 0.15 over 1, and we're multiplying both by 100. So if we multiply both by 100, we get 15 100ths. And then, of course, the last step is to reduce the fraction. We always reduce fractions to lowest terms. So what number will divide evenly into 15 and 100? The answer is 5. So 15 divided by 5 is 3. 100 divided by 5 is 20. So 0.15 is the same thing as 3/20. It might not look the same, but it represents the same value. Okay, so some other examples. Well, 0.8, same idea. Change it to a fraction, and you can do that. You can write 0.8 over 1, and then you can multiply, in this case, by 10, both the numerator and the denominator by 10, because there's only one digit to the right of the decimal. Excuse me. So 0.8 times 10 will give you 8. 1 times 10 will give you 10. So we have 8/10, and then we have to simplify. 8 is divisible by 2, and so is 10. So 8 divided by 2 is 4. 10 divided by 2 is 5. So our answer is 4/5. Now, same thing as with fractions. We can have a mixed fraction, or a mixed decimal in this case. So we have 4.2. We have a whole number, 4, and we have a decimal, which is the 0.2. So when we're changing a decimal to a fraction, we leave the whole number. We don't do anything with the whole number. So the 4 stays as a 4. Then we work with the 0.2. So again, you can write it over 1 and multiply both the numerator and the denominator by 10. So 0.2 times 10 is 2. 0.1 times 10 is 10. So our fraction is 2/10. And then we simplify. Both are divisible by 2. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Keep the 4, the whole number, and our fraction is 1/5. So 4.2 equals 4 and 1/5. Same thing. Okay, another example, 5.12. So again, don't change the 5. The 5 is not going to change. It's going to continue through to the end. What we are changing is the 0.12. So again, 0.12 over 1 multiplied by, this time 100, because we have 2 digits to the right of the decimal. 0.12 times 100 will give us 12. 1 times 100 will give us 100. So our fraction is 12/100ths, and then we simplify. We divide, not multiply, sorry, divide by 4. 12 divided by 4 is 3. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So the answer is 5 and 3/25. So remember to always simplify your fraction. Okay, so that's decimals to fractions. And we can obviously go the other way, a fraction to a decimal. So to change from a fraction to a decimal is actually easier. We divide the numerator by the denominator. So this is easier because you can do it with a calculator. So just take your calculator, do 3 divided by 4, and you will get 0.75. Then what we just did from a decimal to a fraction, so 0.4, you write it as a fraction, so 0.4 over 1, and then you multiply this time by 10, so you get 4/10, and then you simplify. Divide both by 2, and you get 2/5. Okay, so you can go from a fraction to a decimal. You can also go from a decimal to a fraction. So fractions to decimals. So again, you divide the numerator by the denominator. So to change 3/4 into a decimal, you would divide 3 by 4. So again, you can use your calculator. 3 divided by 4 into your calculator, and you will get 0.75. Or you can use long division. How many times will 4 divide into 3? The bottom number, the denominator, you have to see how many times it will divide into 3. 4 obviously will not divide into 3, so 3 is 3.0. So that decimal point needs to go in our answer in the same spot. So 4 doesn't divide into 3, so that's 0. So then we add a 0 to the 3, which gives us 30. 4 times 7 will give us 28. So then we subtract 28. That leaves us with 2. 4 will not divide into 20, so we add another 0. 4 divides into 20 evenly 5 times, which will give us 20, and we have a 0 remainder. Okay, so our answer is 0.75. So don't forget about that 0 if you're using long division. So this is called a terminating decimal, and it's called a terminating decimal because it comes to an end. So we end up with a remainder of 0. Some decimals are repeating decimals, which means that they go on forever. So 1/3, for example. So if you use your calculator and you divide, 1 divided by 3, you end up with something that looks like this, 0.3333, and it fills all the spaces on my calculator. That 3 will repeat forever, and usually if it's a repeating decimal, we put a line over the top to indicate that it repeats forever. So to do it with long division, 3 divided into 1, so it's 1 decimal, 0. 3 will not divide into 1, put my decimal there. I add the 0, so 3 divides into 10 3 times evenly, which is 9. Leaves me 10 take away 9 is 1. And I just keep doing the same thing over and over again, so I end up with 3.33333. So that's called a repeating decimal. Okay, so write each fraction as a decimal and round to 1 decimal place where necessary. So 1/4 as a decimal, you can use your calculator, as I mentioned, and just punch in. Oh, my calculator disappeared. Punch in 1 divided by 4, and you will get 0.25. This is probably, like I said, the easiest way to do it. And just about everybody has a phone now, and you have a calculator on your phone. So just do it this way. So for number 2, though, it's a bit different because we have a whole number. So remember, that whole number is not going to change. It's the fraction that we're changing. So 3/5, 3 divided by 5, which will give me, if I do 3 divided by 5, my answer is 0.6. So I'm not going to do 0.6 because that means my whole number is 20, which is not right. So I can't do that. So what I have to remember, let's erase this, what I have to remember, my 2 stays the same. This 0.6, that 0 is holding the place for the 2. So instead of a 0 there, we're putting a 2 there and then 0.6. Okay, so don't get mixed up when you see 0.6 and then add that on, because that's 3/5, so that 0 is the spot where the whole number 2 goes. So the answer is 2.6. Okay, so we did some of these on Thursday. So we did some practice on Thursday, but I just wanted you to show you those ones. So let's move on then. So we looked at decimals on Thursday, so today we're going to look at percents. So percent begins, information on percent begins on page 6. So you've got some information on percent and then your support question. There's not a whole lot of information on percent, just a little bit. And changing a percent to decimals. So do that support question number 3. Then on the next page, it's changing a decimal to a percent, and support question number 4. Make sure you do that. And then at the bottom of page 7, percent of a value. So take your time, and then support question number 5 is on the following page. So let's look at percents. So percent, when we say percent, we are really saying per 100 or out of 100. 1% written, you can write it in words, 1%, or you can write it with the number 1 and the percent symbol, means 1 per 100 or 1 out of 100. So in this diagram here, there's 100, this strip is divided into 100 equal squares. one of those squares is green. So 1 out of the 100 or 1% is green. Okay, so 50% means 50 per 100, or again 50 out of 100. So there again, this box is divided into 100 equal sized squares. 50 of those squares is green, so 50 out of 100, or 50% is green. 25% means 25 per 100, or 25 out of 100. So again, the box is divided into 100 little squares, equal sized. 25 of them are green, so that is 25 out of 100, or 25%. Okay, so 100% means all of it. So if you get 100% on a test, that means you get all of it right. If 100% of the squares are green, that means the whole thing is green. Okay, so 100% of 80 is 80. So 100% of 40 is 40. 100% of 39 is 39. So if you have 100% of something, it means the whole thing, that number. 100% of 20 is 20. 100% 80 is 80. 50% means half of it. So 50% of 80 is 40. So 50% means a half. So if you have 80, a half of 80 is 40. If it's 50% of 60, a half of 60 is 30. So think of 50% as a half. 5% means 5 100ths, because it's out of 100. So 5% of 80 is 4. So as a fraction, 5 100ths, multiply it by 80 and you get 4. So 5% of 80 is 4. Okay, so because percent means per 100, think this should be divided by 100. So 75% really means 75 divided by 100. So this is a fraction, but remember in lesson 1 when we were talking about fractions, we said that fractions also mean divide. So 75% means 75 out of 100, or 75 divided by 100. And 100% is 100 out of 100, or exactly 1, because 100 divided by 100 is 1. 100% of any number is just the number. 200% is 200 out of 100, or 2. So 200% of any number is twice the number. So 200% of 60 is 120. 60 plus 60 is 120. A percent can also be expressed as a decimal or a fraction. So half of a pizza can be written as a percentage. So remember we said half is 50%. As a decimal, 0.5, or as a fraction, a half. So 3 ways of writing a percent. As a percent, as a decimal, or as a fraction. These all represent the same amount. Okay, so how do you convert a percent to a decimal? If they all represent the same amount, then they all can be converted. So divide a percent by 100 and remove the percent sign to convert from a percent to a decimal. So easy. Divide a percent, the number, by 100 and then remove the percent sign. So example 1, 10% becomes 10 divided by 100, which is 0.10. So no percent sign. Example 2, 67.5% becomes 67.5, get rid of the percent sign, and divide that by 100, and it's 0.675. The shortcut way to convert from a percentage to a decimal is by removing the percent sign and moving the decimal point 2 places to the left. So for example, 10%, change that to a decimal. So this would be 10% with the decimal here, because any whole number the decimal would be to the right. Doesn't matter what the whole number is. So 43, if we had to put a decimal point in there, it would be to the right of the whole number. Okay, so 10% is basically 10 with a decimal point. So then to change this from a percentage to a decimal, we take that decimal point and we move it 2 places to the right, so it will be in front of the 1, so it will be decimal 10, and I like to put a 0 in the whole numbers spot just to hold that spot so it doesn't get confusing. Okay, so you basically take the decimal, move it 2 places to the left. So 50% as a decimal. So to convert 50% to a decimal, we rewrite 50% in terms of per 100 or over 100. So 50% is 50 over 100, or 50% is 50 over 100. Okay, same thing, just different ways of writing it. 50 100ths is the same as 50 divided by 100. So to do the division, we get 50 divided by 100, which is 0.5, and therefore 50% is equal to 0.5. How to convert a decimal to a percent? So we just did percent to decimal. Now decimal to percent, we do the opposite. So to change a percent to a decimal, we divide it by 100. To do the opposite, we multiply it by 100. And then, of course, because we're changing it to percent, we must add the percent sign. Otherwise, it's not percent. So converting from a decimal to a percentage is done by multiplying the decimal value by 100 and then adding the percent sign. So 0.10 becomes 0.10 times 100 equals 10, and then don't forget the percent sign. If you just put 10, that's not right. Okay, you're changing to a percent, so you have to put the percent sign. 0.675 times 100 will give us 67.5%. The shortcut to convert from decimal to percent is to move the decimal 2 places to the right and add a percent sign. So 0.675. We're moving it, we're changing a decimal to a percent, so we take that decimal point and we move it 2 places to the right, so we end up with 67.5, and we need to put in that percent sign. Okay, so the other way was to move it to the left. To change from a percent to a decimal, we move the decimal point to the left. To change from a decimal to a percent, we move it to the right. The mathematical process in converting a decimal to a percent is multiply 0.5 by 100 over 100. So since 100 over 100 equals 1, we're only multiplying by 1 and not changing the value of our number. So 0.5 over 1, and we're multiplying, remember, both of it by 100, top and bottom, equals 50 over 100. And 50 over 100 means 50 out of 100, which is 50 per 100, or 50%. So 0.5 is 50%. Okay, so we can change a fraction to a decimal, and a decimal to a percent, and then a percent to a decimal, and a decimal to a fraction. So if we take the fraction 3/4, to change that to a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. So on your calculator, you do 3 divided by 4, or if you're doing it the other way, you divide 4 into 3 using long division. That will give you 0.75 as a decimal, and then to change from a decimal to a percent, you multiply by 100. So 0.75 times 100 will give you 75, and you add the percent sign. Okay, so then we can go from a percent to a decimal. So decimal to a percent, you multiply 100, percent to a decimal, you divide by 100. Sorry. So 75 divided by 100 will give you 0.75. Then to go from a decimal to a fraction, we multiply by 10 to the nth, which means how many zeros there are, and we reduce. So 75 over 100, sorry, 0.75. I'm looking at the wrong thing here. And there's 2 digits, so we multiply by 100 over 1 times 100. So we end up with 75 over 100, which we already did with the fraction, and then we have to reduce that fraction, and they are both divisible by 25. 75 divided by 25 is 3. 100 divided by 25 is 4. So 3/4. Okay? So change from a decimal to a percent and a percent to a decimal is a little bit easier than changing from a fraction to a decimal or a decimal to a fraction. But we can do all of it. So all of these represent, fractions, decimals, and percent, all represent the same amount. Okay, so let's leave this page open so that we can look and see what we're doing. Oops. Okay, so practice. Convert the percents into decimals and the decimals into percents. So we got 89%, number 1. We want to change that 89% to a decimal. So what do we do to change a percent to a decimal? So down here, percent, we want to change to a decimal. So what do? We divide by 100. So 89%, sorry, over 100 or divided by 100. So we get rid of the percent sign. We have 89 over 100, and we can use our calculator. 89 divided by 100 will give us 0.89. Okay, the shortcut, as I mentioned before, if you want to use the shortcut, if you understand it, is to move the decimal point 2 places to the left, and that will give us 0.89. Number 2, let's do the percents to decimals first, actually, so we don't get confused here. So number 3, 100%. Well, 100% is 100. If we remove the percent sign, 100 over 100, 100 divided by 100 equals 1. So our answer is a whole number. It's not actually a decimal. Okay, number 4, 94%. So 94% is 94 over 100, or 94 divided by 100, which will give us 0.94. And as I said, you can do these on a calculator, or you can do the shortcut by moving the decimal point 2 places to the right. 2 places to the left. So 85% is 85 over 100, so we divide by 100, which will give us 0.85. Number 7 is a little bit different because we've got a decimal in there. So 19.5 is 19.5 over 100, because it's still out of 100. It doesn't matter how many digits are on the top. You're still dividing by 100. So remember to divide, take the for the shortcut, move the decimal 2 places to the left. So we end up with 0.195. Excuse me. Number 10, 81%. So 81 out of 100. So 81 divided by 100 will give us 0.81. Okay, so that's percents to decimals. So now let's do some decimals to percents. So 0.66, and to change from a decimal to a percent, we are multiplying by 100. So 0.66 times 100 will give us 66, and we need to put in that percent symbol. Otherwise, it's not right. Okay, number 5, 0.40, and all we're going to do is multiply that by 100, and that will give us 40 Number 8, 0.37 times 100 will give us 37%. Number 9, we've got 1.65. We're multiplying it by 100. That will give us 100. Oops. Multiplied by 100, that will give us 165%. Number 11, 0.83 multiplied by 100 will give us 83%. And number 12, 0.38 multiplied by 100 will give us 38%. Okay, so that's changing a decimal to a percent. And percent to a decimal. Okay, so the next thing we're going to look at is percent of a number. So the numbers that you will be converting into percentages can be given to you in 2 different formats, so decimal and fraction. So we can change a decimal to a percent or a fraction to a percent. Decimal format is easier to calculate into a percentage. We just did that. It's pretty easy. Converting a decimal to a percent is as simple as multiplying it by 100. So to convert 0.87 to a percent, we multiply by 100. 0.87 times 100 will give us 87. So that's 87%. Percent is often abbreviated with the percent symbol, as you've seen. So you can present your answer as 87% or 87 with the word percent, whichever way you want to do it. If you're given a fraction, first of all, convert it to a percentage by dividing the top number by the bottom number. If you're given, for example, 13 100ths, you would divide 13 by 100, which will give you 0.13. Then follow the steps above for converting a decimal to a percent. So 0.13 times 100 is 13, so 13%. So fraction to decimal to percent. Okay, and we need to do this because sometimes there will be sales and we might get a discount at half off or 1/3 off or 1/5 off or whatever. So then we want to know, well, how much am I going to pay or how much am I going to save? So the more difficult task comes when you need to know a percentage when you are given numbers that don't fit so neatly into 100. So for example, Chris bought a jacket at 25% off. Well, what 25% off what? Sandra got 95 on her science test. Mimi has read 50% of her book. Jordan's iPad has 17% battery left. So most of the time you will be given a percentage of a specific number. For example, you may know that 40% of your paycheck will go to taxes, and you want to find out how much money that is. To calculate the percentage of a specific number, you first convert the percentage number to a decimal. So percent to decimal. So this process is the reverse of what we did earlier. You divide your percentage by 100. So 40% would be 40 divided by 100, which will give you 0.40. Once you have the decimal version of your percentage, simply multiply it by the given number. So in this case, the amount of your paycheck. So say your paycheck is $750, you would multiply 750 by the decimal 0.40. That will give you 300. So that means that $300 is what you pay in taxes. So let's try another example. So you need to save 25% of your paycheck for the next 6 months to pay for an upcoming vacation. If your paycheck is $1,500, how much should you save? So first, start by converting 25% to a decimal. So 25 divided by 100 will give you 0.25. Now, second thing, multiply the decimal by the amount of your paycheck, or $1,500. So 1,500 times 0.25 equals $375. So this means that you need to save $375 from each paycheck in order to pay for your vacation. Okay, so another reason we would do this if things are on sale. So what is 37% of 600? So first of all, change the percent to a decimal. So 37, change that to a decimal by dividing by 100, which will give us 0.37. Then we multiply our decimal 0.37 times the amount given, which is 600. So 0.37 0.37, you don't have to put the 0 in there. The calculator will put it in for you right away. Times 600 will give you 222. So 37% of 600 is 222. Okay, what is 51% of 200? So change your percent to a decimal by dividing by 100. That will give us 0.51. And then I'm going to multiply by 200. So when you see something like what is 15% of 200, think of 200 as times 200. In math, of usually indicates multiplication. So we have 0.51 times 200, which is 102. So 51% of 200 is 102. Number 3, what is 86% of 950? So we need to change that 86% to a decimal by dividing by 100. So 86 divided by 100 equals 0.86. And then we multiply times 950. So 0.86 times 950 equals 817. Okay, 71% of 1,000, change the percent to a decimal. 71 divided by 100 equals 0.71, and then 0.71 times 1,000 equals 710. Okay, that one you could probably do in your head. Okay, so let's skip down here. Number 7, what is 65% of $610? So now we've got a percent of money. So the only difference in finding a percent of a money value is that you have to use a dollar sign in your answer. So 65%, let's change that to a decimal first, 0.65, and then 0.65 times 610. You don't have to put in 610 decimal 00. Okay, just 610 is fine. So 0.65 times 610 is 396.5. Now 396.5 is not your answer because you're asked what is 65% of $610. So your answer is actually going to include a dollar sign and $396, and that 5, remember, in the tenths place is 50 cents. So 396.50, not 396.5. Okay, so be careful when you're dealing with money. Make sure you write your answer properly. Okay, so 60% of, again, $297. Change 60% to a decimal, 0.60, then multiply by 297. So 0.6 times 297 is 178.2, and as a dollar amount, it's dollar sign 178.20, because that 0.2 is 20 cents. Okay, so take your time when you're dealing with money. Okay, so for your key questions, key question 11, change the following percents to decimals. So change your percent to a decimal. How do you change a percent to a decimal? You get rid of the percent sign and you divide by 100. Be careful. We've got 2% here. We haven't done any examples with that. Next page, number 2, change the following decimals to percent. How do you change a decimal to a percent? You multiply by 100. And don't forget to add your percent sign at the end. Number 3, a pair of boots are on sale for 25% off. Find the discount on the boots if the price is $89.99. Remember that money must be rounded to 2 decimal places. So for part A, we're finding the discount. So we need to find out what 25% of 89.99 is. So first of all, change your percent to a decimal, and then you multiply that decimal by the cost. And that will give you the discount. So how much money you are going to save. Oops, NT. Then part B, what is the sale price of the boots after the discount? So now you have to take the original price of the boots, $89.99, and you have to subtract the discount amount. And that will give you the sale price. Okay, so take your time doing that one. Make sure you are doing it step by step so you don't make any mistakes. Okay, so that is it for our class today. When we